Hello, this is the Oak Bloke. I'm going to talk about Next Energy Solar, NESF, and they've released their 2025 results today. So this is those results, Next Energy Solar Fund. Results to 31st of March, and on the face of it, you'd look at this and say, well, okay, the NAV is down. The, see the NAV in millions is down. You've got a slightly lower gross asset value, so that's sort of the assets minus the debt would be that number there. Cash dividends covered 1.1 times. It was covered 1.3 times. Gearing 48%, and so on. So yeah, various different stats. Anyway, I had a look at these numbers, and this is a share that I did hold in 2024. I sold it and did think about including this in the Oak Bloke 2525, but decided not to. And at the time, I wrote an article on that, which was, I've closed it down, but it was this considering the temptation of NESF, which is this article here. And and I sort of got to a point where I was sort of saying, well, the share price has fallen far below the NAV. The fact that the assets are in the UK, it kind of doesn't matter, because on one hand, the heat of solar in, let's say, the Sahara Desert, the heat reduces the efficiency. So even though there's more solar irradiance, the increased heat reduces the amount of power that you can get. So in other words, as you move, I mean, these are all the different countries of the world. If you've got solar in cold countries, the efficiency is higher, even though the amount of sunshine is potentially lower. Whereas if you have them at the equator, the amount of sunshine potentially is higher, but the efficiency is lower. So there's actually quite an interesting linkage where yields are not actually that different. You'd sort of imagine that they would be, but they're not. I mean, obviously there are some differences. You can see the UK's lower than average a little bit, but not vastly lower. So there is a bit of a riddle contradiction to that. Anyway, I got to a point where I was working through, and the nature of these funds, these trusts, is that they have holdcos and midcos, and it's all a bit obfuscated. It's all a bit sort of tucked away and hidden. So you've got to really sort of try and decipher the underlying performance and the underlying numbers. But anyway, I got to a point where I was looking at it, and it was just down to the fact that I was looking at it from a cash flow point of view, and then looking at it, obviously very attractive dividend. Plus there was buybacks. I mean, you kind of look at it and go, wow, 12, and this is last year. So when I wrote this article, so obviously this isn't sort of up to date numbers, but they were doing buybacks, they were doing really high dividends, there was a discount. I mean, tick, 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 tick. It all looks amazing. But, and there was a but, where kind of went through it. But I got to a point where I went, oh, hang on, what is going on here? So this was the but here, where I sort of said, well, hang on, if I look at what I'm calling the real profit, and what I'm doing, and I'm just a simple soul, but my approach to this was to say to, like, well, there should be you should be sort of taking into account the depreciation on these assets, because otherwise I call it the snake that's eating its own tail. That I mean, you're getting cash from the assets, but essentially you're living on borrowed time, and those assets are are dwindling away. So I mean, in that you can look at that and go, well, I don't care. Like I'll get my 12%, I'll get my 14%. But the problem with that approach, and actually the problem when I looked at today's results, was that the problem with eating your own tail is eventually you eat enough of yourself that you can't sort of digest anything anymore because you've lost your stomach. Sorry, my analogy is probably not the best one, but you get the idea that when you actually sort of take into account the income minus the operational costs minus the depreciation, what I sort of got to was a point where I said, well, and then you've got to pay the dividend out of that real profit. So essentially, what they're doing is robbing Peter to pay Paul. You might say, maybe that's a better analogy than the snake swallowing its own tail. But this is sort of a real problem. Now, obviously, if you've got assets that are sort of maturing or assets that are under construction and that they are going to generate income, you could make the argument to say, well, okay, like they're eating their own tail today, but give it a year, give it 2 years, and but the problem that I saw in today's results is, I'll just show it to you in this screen here. The problem is that this one here, that okay, on the face of it, you'd sort of go, oh yeah, goody goody, 73 million minus 7 million minus the preference share dividend is 56 million, and there's 49 million. It's 1.1 times covered, fully covered, but it's not. And the reason it's not is that this OPEX is it's not including depreciation, amortization. So really, as I say, you're living on borrowed time. You're sort of living day to day, but you're eating your seed corn. Okay. So that's the fundamental point that I make in this, and the reason I'm even bothering to cover this share. Well, part of it was I genuinely wanted to sort of see if I'd made a mistake in when I sort of rejected it. Was it that I'd sort of worrying about nothing or whatever? But no, I mean, from today's numbers, I see it's clearly living on borrowed time. I suppose the question is how much borrowed time is there until they have to cut the dividend, or at what point does the cliff edge cause a problem here? So anyway, you can see here the EBITDA has dropped slightly, well, slightly about 6%. The EBIT, so obviously the bit there is the DA, the depreciation amortization. So that's how I'm getting to the, that's 55.2 million is the difference between that number and that number. But then we sort of look at the cash and cash movements. We could see proceeds to and from holdcos. So this is what I mean about obfuscating, is that in actual terms of money flowing, we've got 12.9, plus we've got the intercompany loan repayments, 28. So we're only actually looking at 42.7 million of proceeds, okay, and then plus this 1.467 as well, to be fair. So this net cash, when you actually look at it here, it doesn't add up. And I was sort of puzzling this, thinking, well, why is it not adding up? Anyway, it was obvious that if you look at these little arrows, where's the cash coming from? So, some of it's coming from here, some of it's coming from here. Now, in this cash flow statement, they say 1.5 million. Here they say 5.4. I mean, quite why the number should be different. 5.4 MP3 and co-investments. I guess it must be the co-investments. This bit here is we don't know how much this is. Look, they don't tell us, but they do say that they've siphoned off 12.7. But then that's a cash movement. That's not profit. Okay, so this is sort of a cash flow diagram. But over here we can see sale of assets 57.3 million. Now that plus that equals that 73. In other words, this bit by here and this bit by here, 0.57 and 0.92, basically you've got 3.3 million, 5.3 million. So 8.6 of that 73 is actually gains on disposal. It's the stake eaten itself. The underlying portfolio, this and this, is only actually generating 64. Okay, and remember we said that the EBITDA was 90s, what was it, 94 and 39. Well, it's not, because you know that 8.6 million gain, I mean, there's no depreciation and amortization on a gain on disposal. Yeah, you know, whatever the NAV was the NAV, and then you know, they've made a profit on top of the NAV. Yeah, so you know, that 8.6 needs to come off those numbers. So this bit and this bit have only actually generated 30.4 million earnings before income. Sorry, earnings before interest and taxes. So that 7.3 that I was pointing out, this one here doesn't include depreciation. So yeah, so that's it. So actually, sort of when you sort of get down to it, you're down to sort of left with sort of very little income. This bit didn't add up either. So investment income had dropped from 57 to 20. This was the thing that spooked me the last time. You know, it's dropped here as well, although the explanation is that it's dropped here from 57 to 20 because of this intercompany loan repayments. But if you're eagle-eyed, you'll say, well, hang on, 28 million plus 20 million is 48 million, so 48 versus 57, you've still got the same problem, that income has dropped. Yeah, and obviously that difference is the 8.6 again. You know, that's so there's quite a big hole in the the income, which isn't a great thing. So going back to the original point, and it was the reader who said to me, well, oh, you know, you're valuing say it's Onyx. So say it's Onyx is where's that gone? That is, sorry, bear with me. Actually, let me get to it from here. So if we go into SEIT, and it was it more twists? I think it was more twists. No, it was this one, the Onyx day's work. Yeah. So in this, I sort of say, you know, this. So I think it was, yeah. Now in the original article, it was 16 times, but this 14 and a half times, because it's got the because it's got the yeah, the earnings relative. So I think it was sorry, my brain's gone. Yeah, so I've used the interim number to get to that 14 and a half times 14 and a half times EBITDA earnings. So yeah, anyway, that's based on 17-year average power price agreement, which is a lot longer than NESF, just as, you know, by the by. So anyway, if we compare, so yes, you know, last year it was a 99 million EBITDA, but that 99 million EBITDA, can't remember if there was any disposals in last year's results, but certainly in this year's results there are. So that 94 includes the disposals, which, you know, when you actually take those out, you end up with 39 minus the 8.6, so 30 million EBITDA. That actually gets you to a 10 times EBIT and 4.1 times EBITDA. So that's kind of, you know, and that's all right. That's all right. But then we've got, yeah. So I've just sort of repeated the these movements here. So let's get down to this. So what I've done here, and I could put it on. I've got the Excel workings here actually. So what I've done here is I've taken. So basically, this is the market cap for today. This is 24% of the market cap of SEIT. The other 76 is over here, and I'm kind of using these. I mean, there are some other bits and pieces with SEIT, but this is sort of the large part of the portfolio, along with Onyx. Sorry, along with Onyx, which is this one here. So what I'm doing is this number here and this number here is this is the project equity plus the debt. So in the case of NESF, that's oops, sorry, messing up my own formally. This is the debt and the equity. So this is kind of GAV is kind of like enterprise value essentially. So it's equity plus or minus the debt. Okay, so you can sort of see here. I mean, if you take both of those together, you get to what 1 point. Oh yeah, can't see that because it's my face is in the way. Well, yeah, it basically comes to about 1100. Oh, yeah, I won't be able to show it that to you, but anyway, that plus that you can probably work that out in your head. 1100 versus 1061. So they're, from a enterprise value point of view, both of these two trusts are sort of pretty equal to one another. It's fair to say that obviously this one is 552 market cap versus this one at 404. But obviously the debt is much larger in this one. Okay, so the NAV, you can see here the NAV is more than double in SEIT. The EBITDA, so I've taken the EBITDA earnings, I've taken the depreciation, I've arrived to the EBIT, I've then taken the dividends, and again what I'm doing here is I'm pro-rating the dividends between the two sets of assets. So 24% of the dividend at SEIT is, so the whole dividend is £67.1 million. 24% of it's therefore 16.1. So what that ultimately gives us is, well, in the case of this one, this is sort of eating its own tail as well, okay, by about 10 million. This one's eating its own tail by about 20 million. And over here, if we look at the rest of SEIT, this is eating its own tail as well. In other words, when you actually factor in the depreciation, and sorry, let me explain these numbers as well. So this is then the 76% of the market cap. This is this is taking the enterprise value of these four holdings. As I say, that's not the actual sort of other holdings is slightly higher again, but we don't get disclosure on what all the project debt is on the small stuff. So I don't think there is an overall EV for it, unfortunately. So what that's giving us there is the NAV for 76%. That earnings is again, that's based upon the rate at 30th of September 2024. So it's what I'm doing is I'm dividing that by 1.35. Now, obviously, that exchange rate is a lot higher than it was 6 months ago. I mean, if we were back to sort of a world of well, yeah, I mean, you get the idea that 66 million would be more like 72-ish, maybe a bit, maybe 70 million, if the exchange rate was back to where it was before. So, I mean, I'm not making excuses, but that is the reality that the FX rate has depressed SEIT's earnings relative to, but there we go. Might go the other way in the future. Whereas obviously this is all pretty much GBP with about 5 or 6% euro, Italy. So yeah, this is 90 something percent UK, whereas this is obviously this is US, and then a lot of that is US, Spain, Far East, a little bit of UK, but Not much, not much. So what I do down here is I've taken the upside from construction. So this 19.65, let me just move him out the way. Let's sort of just, I haven't made up these numbers. I've looked them up and see if we can find that. I did find it in here. Construction. Let's see if we can find it. It's yeah, they do say like we've got this much under construction. Yeah, I think it was this. So 19.65. Some of it will be, well, majority of it will be later this year. Some of it will be beyond 2025. But you can see 19.65 on 753 is kind of 2.6%. So there's not much that's not operational, which obviously is a good thing. Whereas over here, this is actually only sort of well, in the case of Onyx, what I've done is I've taken the operational number from my article, which was 123. I've taken the construction, which I've taken from the annual report 2024. So in other words, there's a 72.2% upside from construction. In other words, once that 88.8 is operational, I mean, what I'm doing, rightly or wrongly, I mean, I was sort of pondering this, thinking, well, is the net margin going to be identical? I'm just going to assume that it is. So what you're getting here is future EBIT is basically just taking that 72%, adding it to that to get 11, to get that number there, 11 and a half. So the future profits would look like that. Future profits for NESF would look like that. So 2.6% gets you to 31. So once you've got that future, this is what I was saying before, like once you factor in the stuff that's coming down the pipeline, and just to explain, I'm not including in my calculations. So there was, I think it was, if I do expectations, there were these various different expectations. Let me see if I can find them. It's yeah, so maybe no, I'm not finding them. Yeah, so under the assets, let's just get into this bit here. It was yeah, there was some various points where they were saying, well, we reckon that we reckon that there's going to be sort of uplifts to the valuation due to different, or maybe it was in the annual report thinking about it. Let me see if I can find it. It was in this one. So let's expectations. I think this was it. Yeah, so yeah, so like basically, if you go through all the assets, there's these updated expectations that an extra 10 to 20 million is going to be added to NAV. So what they don't say is that this is going to increase cash flow. They do say that it'll increase the net asset value. So in this case, for example, this one is Red Rochester, and what they're saying here is they've got an initiative to improve, basically fill, get bums on seats, to get sort of parts of the industrial park that are empty filled with tenants to yeah, if you can get tenants, then obviously that will deliver. But when I look at this, I mean, it's a bit weird because obviously having tenants would provide more cash flow. It wouldn't increase the NAV necessarily, or at least the increase of NAV would, because the valuation goes up because you're earning more cash flow. But what they don't give you, or they don't give us, is what that cash flow would be. So an upgrade of 10 to 20 million on the asset. This one update of 8 million, and then a further 2 to 7 million. And this is a combined heat and power construction. due to come online Q2 2025. Basically, I'm not going to go through all of these, but all of these sort of add up to a lot more. So I'm not factoring any of those in the. All I'm doing is I'm taking the. Sorry, it's this one here. What I'm doing is I'm taking the percentage. In the case of Onyx, I'm taking the percentage that we know is under construction because they tell us what's under construction. So I'm basically doing that. And then in the case of everything other than Onyx, so you might sort of say, well, where are you getting this 11 three 39 from? So what I'm doing here is I'm basically saying, well, the upside is based upon the fact this times by 2.25 is that 72% of the portfolio as at, I think it was as at September 2024. I might be wrong on that, but it is operational. It's this chart here. Portfolio. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it is by September. 76 is operational. Sorry, I think I might have said 72. 76 is operational. 12 plus 7, 19 is not operational. It's under construction and being developed. So 19 versus 76 is 25%. That's kind of where I'm getting that from. And again, all I'm doing is I'm saying I'm working on the basis that there's a 25% uplift. So, basically taking that income, and then I'm sort of deducting out the 5 million of increased income here because I don't want to count it twice, to basically get sort of the net then is sort of 11 million here. So 11 plus 5 is 16, and that's 16 on the increase on the 44. So that's where I'm getting the 25. So that gets me to a sort of future stage where now it's sort of still eating its tail, but the tail is now sort of being nibbled very, very slightly. And you can see like a lot of these, some of these are long life. The shortest one is this one, Aliva, which is 17 years. So all I'm doing to get the depreciation is say, well, the gross asset value is 129 million. Divide that by the 17 years to get 7.6 million. So the EBIT therefore is that minus 7.6 is that. So it's not absolutely foolproof, but it's reasonable. And obviously I'm using the EBIT number from NESF. So I'm just using, the number they give, which is the 55 million. But what they don't tell you is like, well, the EBITDA includes things that are nothing to do with the operations. So you've got to strip out the extraordinary income, what I would class extraordinary income, gains on disposal, to kind of get there. Anyway, where we end up is that, so like there is still 6 million of kind of nibbling, whereas here, even with this upside here that they tell us about, we're still looking at sort of with dividends as they are now. Obviously, either these or these could cut the dividends, and then they'd be not eating their own tail anymore. This 6 million, I'd like to think that with all of those initiatives, under the word expectations, all of those initiatives that are coming down the line will cover that 6 million in the next year or 2 or 3. But I'm sort of, and obviously because these are long life assets, that there's plenty of time to kind of stop the tail nibbling. To get it to a point where you're actually covering the depreciation. And when I say covering the depreciation, I mean, I'm not sort of saying, to actually physically put that money in a pot somewhere for a rainy day or anything like that. But it's just the idea that, if you're consuming your own seed corn, then obviously that's you can only do that for so long, and then you've got no seeds and you've got no harvest because you've eaten your seed corn. If you know the saying, don't eat your seed corn, well, I'm sorry, but NESF is not following that rule, and the rate at which it's not following that rule is quite scary. And obviously, the other problem they've got, not only are they eating their tail, but obviously they've got the debt and they're trying to pay off that debt. The other thing that I noticed is that there is a bit of a cliff edge. So I think with the preference shares that those are due to end in 2030. So they've only got a limited amount of time to find the cash. I think it was 2031 I saw. So you've got 200 million or 200 million preference shares that you've also got to worry about. You've got an RCF that you've also got to worry about. So that's the other thing, that not only is your dividend eating the tail, but your disposals are going to be eating the tail doubly fast. That's the other perhaps thing to be saying here, is that it's by getting rid of assets, well, you're getting rid of the income from those assets. Now, obviously, SEIT is planning to do the same thing potentially, in the sense that it's planning to sell Onyx. I mean, a couple of things I'd say about that. Number one, if they do that, then I wouldn't expect them to do it at some sort of sort of silly price. That if they sell it, they'll be doing it because it makes sense. That they're sort of able to get NAV or very, very close, if not above. There's not really, I mean, apart from if you're a distressed seller, desperate to sell because you've got debts to pay and you've got to just take whatever offer that's being made to you. They're not in that position. They've got the extended line of credit as well, so they've refinanced Onyx. So that's all positive. The other thing that was interesting, looking at the annual report, and I hadn't really picked this up before, but I think it's in here that Onyx also sort of charges for asset management fees and management of assets. So it's not clear to me that the actual assets are held forever on the books. It's all to do with this development platform. Let me see if I can search by development platform, because obviously we've got let's try that. Or maybe it was in this report, thinking about it. Development platform. No, it was something that I spotted, though, that made me think, oh, okay, that's interesting. That's sort of how they approach it. Let's see if I might be under here. Look, it's yeah, I think it was under here where they talk about under these risks, and then so that's primary energy. Under here was that they talk about additional revenues from existing assets. So there was this mid-continent independent system operator capacity market. So there's sort of like extra fees to be earned through that. Some additional technology upgrades there. But there was something, and I can't see it now, but there was something around how that was a further upside. Maybe it was in the 2023 report. Anyway, that probably gets me to close to my end. So, I mean, what I'm saying here is that when you actually look at it on an EV/EBIT basis, and my argument is that looking at it on an EV, so enterprise value to earnings before interest and tax, that's a much more sensible way to look at these valuations. When you do that, I mean, NESF is on a 34 times versus Onyx on a 17.5 times, and the other assets other than Onyx are on a less than 9 times. So in other words, this is sort of, well, 3.5 times cheaper on that basis. Also, the other thing I just call out is the cash income is 96 million. So obviously cash is not including the depreciation. So depreciation would be non-cash, but 64 million versus 96 million. I mean, that is just the other just obvious thing that you know, the cash, it's the Jerry Maguire moment, isn't it? Show me the money, and NESF is not showing the money. That 64.6 million cash income is far less, and I possibly think that that includes that gain from disposal, because obviously that would have been cash income as part of it. So yeah, if you strip that out, then you're down to 55 million more or less. So yeah, in conclusion, you know, going back to what my reader said, that, well, you know, you're comparing a 14.5 times versus 4 times. Well, when you kind of strip out the stuff that's kind of obscuring the numbers, I think I stand by what I say, that it Onyx is on a better valuation. The other thing I wanted to point out, and again, this is just sort of interesting, that it's this bit by here that you know, you've also got the problem that NESF has this end to subsidies, and you know, some of it happens sort of next year. This blue line here is sort of a reduction of subsidy, with then a further sort of 10-year cliff edge here. And this green, I believe, is meant to sort of, this is the replacement of the revenue, so available for PPA program. Well, Onyx is already on a PPA program. You know, that's and also this was another thing to call out, was that they themselves, NESF themselves, speak of a falling power price in the US. I've not seen that there's a similar problem with power curves and power prices. The final thing to say is that SEIT is discounted at 9.4%, and if you've watched other videos where I've talked about SEIT, you'll know that I bang the drum about this over and over and over. But NESF is discounted at 8%, so they've dropped it from 8.1 to 8. If you take the guidance from SEIT, a 0.5% change. Now this is compared to 9.4, that would be 2.8 times. Okay, so 2.8 times 5.6p. That would mean that the SEIT NAV really is 92.5p plus 15.7, which would put it at about £1.10 per share. If it valued itself the same as NESF values itself, in other words, 8% is a little bit, I personally think that's actually quite, compared to having a wide range of assets in a variety of jurisdictions with, you know, just different types of revenue. You're not beholden on the sun shining as NESF is. That and subject to the UK power curves and legislation and everything else, and corporation tax. I think that it really doesn't deserve to be on a lower, you know, NESF doesn't deserve to be on a lower, like, to me that is not a lower risk situation. Personally, I think it should be the other way around. And again, if that's the case, then that's another negative to consider. So yeah, look, I mean, I didn't set out to bash poor NESF. I just wanted to see if I'd made a mistake, but looking at it, I don't think I have. I think there's plenty of things to be a bit concerned about, and also that there's not really a, you know, there's not really an escape that I can see. Whereas SEIT, I can see that, you know, there's all the upsides and all the plans that they have, and obviously we'll know more when we get the 2025 final, you know, annual results. So proof of it will be in that to some extent. But yeah, I mean, certainly the positives to take from the results and from the well, I mean, it wasn't necessarily released today, but the gains on disposal are definitely a positive. Obviously, if NESF can dispose of loads more than at huge premiums, then yeah, I guess that there's something that can be clawed back. But would I want to rely upon that? And yes, I mean it does and will pay a high dividend, but I just think there's a shelf life to that. I don't see that it's sustainable at all, and yeah, I just think personally I wouldn't touch it, as much as I'd like to, because I did like it, and but yeah, I think there's just some reasons why its days are numbered. Anyway, that's enough from me. I hope that's been useful. None of this is advice. It's just me talking through what I see. I'll be releasing this article in the next day or so. So yeah, just look out for more videos from me, and do give a like and all of that good stuff. Really appreciate your support. Oak Bloke signing off. Cheerio for now. Cheerio.